Hello guys, what's up? My name is Andrew and I welcome you to this video where I want to build a really small component only written in HTML and CSS. This is a challenge created by Frontend Mentor and all credit goes to them for creating the resources and design files. I just thought that it's a nice exercise to create the HTML and CSS, to create this component here. Again, it's really simple. It just has a title, a body text, and a QR code as an image. So nothing fancy, but I from time to time enjoy leaning back and building something really simple, maybe playing around with new techniques in CSS or HTML. And I thought that I'll take you along on the journey. So what do you think? Let's get started. I will head over to my editor and I already have a QR code component folder created. This one only contains one folder, which is images. In here, again, credit goes to Frontend Mentor for providing these files. They have created this image with the QR code. If you scan it, it will send you to the web page. And they also created a fav icon for the browser to display. Again, this is a really simple example. So we just need two more files. The first one will be my index.html. And the second one, my styles.css, which I will write all my CSS. In most cases, I like to start writing my HTML content, right? Writing the markup, creating my elements, and then as the next step, I will head over to the CSS and apply some styling. So let's do the same in here. Inside my inside my HTML, I will create a empty document. And if you use VS Code or Emmet, you can just press exclamation mark and hit enter. This will scaffold your HTML. We can give it a nice title like QR code component. We already have the char set and the viewport. Next, we need our style sheet to be linked to the HTML, styles.css. And we also need to link our fav icon. So the style sheet is an icon. It has the sizes attribute 32 by 32. This is the width and height of my fav icon, and the type equals to image/png because it's a PNG image. Finally, href points to images and fav icon. Cool. And just for best practices, we can also type a matter name description. In this example, it doesn't really matter. It's not a web page. It's not anything you will find on Google. But just for getting it into your head and getting some memory about, some muscle memory about CEO and best practices, we want to provide a description for what this page is about. So this is a solution for the QR code component challenge on Frontend Mentor. And again, for web pages, you usually specify what this page is about, like your articles or whatever, really. So let's hit save. And that's already done with the head. We have all our elements in here, which means that we can start writing our actual markup, our body, the one that will be visible on the page. Again, this example is really simple. There is a container, an element in the center, and it has this image, it has the title and some body text. So nothing too fancy, and I decided to go with the main element. If you were to build an actual web page with lots of content and layout and you have multiple of those cards, then an article might be better, especially for semantics. But since this is the only element on the page, it's the main landmark, I think main is good to go here. And yeah, cool. We will add an image, which of course points to images/QR code PNG. And let's give it an alt title like QR code pointing to Frontend Mentor.io. The alt tag is really important for screen readers. it will give an explanation to what this image is about. Some users, for example, people without vision, they will not see the image, but the screen reader, they will read out loud what this image is about. So it is always important to be as specific as possible, explaining or describing rather what this image is about or what it stands for. And we will also want to specify a width and height, because if we don't do that and the image loads in the browser, especially on slow connections, you will see some layout shifting around, because before the image has been loaded by the browser, it doesn't know its width and height, its dimensions. So it doesn't know how much space to allocate. And once the image has been loaded, then the content shifts around, because now the browsers know, aha, this image is 500 pixels high, so I have to push my text down by 500 pixels. But this layout shifting, especially on slower connections, and if you have many resources, like many assets, many images, it will really be a bad experience for users. So one way to prevent that from happening is to specify a width and height inside the image tag. And in this case, the browser already knows to allocate 288 by 288 pixels. And this will be a white space as long as the image is loading. But once it's there, then it will be filled out by the image. So a really important tip: always, or whenever possible, specify this either in the HTML or in your CSS. Next, we have our title, and this one is Improve Your Front End Skills by Building Projects. Nice. And finally, we have our paragraph. Scan the QR code to visit Frontend Mentor and take your coding skills to the next level. Awesome. Let's look back into the browser, and that's my text. So it's looking really good. And that's it already. No more markup. It's a really simple component, but I kind of enjoy building these little challenges, because it is a nice distraction from working with heavy projects, with build pipelines and tons of dependencies and whatever. So this is really enjoyable, at least for me. Cool. So before we start writing CSS, let's have a look in our browser. There are multiple ways. You can just open the, not new folder, open the containing folder. We can just double click the index.html file, which will display in the browser. But I think it's much nicer to start a dev server, which will automatically reload whenever something changes. I am using the live server. It's a VS Code extension. You can find it by searching in your extensions here by Ritwig Day. It's really awesome. And what it does is it launches a new server on port 5500 on localhost. And now this is my website. If I put this to the left and my editor to the right, and whenever I update some text or also CSS or JavaScript like that, you will see that it automatically refreshes, and I don't have to press F5 all the time to reload my page, which is really convenient. Cool. Then I would say let's head over to our style sheet. The first thing I tend to do is to create my CSS custom properties. They are also known as CSS variables, and they are like in Sass or less, where you can create variables and reuse them later in your code. A really nice way to store information like colors or text or spacing. But contrary to CSS or less, they are available at runtime, not only at build time. So let's first start with a comment. Paste this in, variables. I like to separate my CSS by having some comments, just so that I can easily find things around. And then we will add a root selector. And this root selector will have some custom properties, 4 in total. The first one is color white, and I am using the HSL namespace, so white is 0 in hue, 0 in saturation, and 100% in lightness, pure white. And you can see in VS Code it already previews my color. Next is the color light gray, HSL, and then in this case we have 212 for hue, 45 for the saturation, and 89 for lightness. This is our background color. Then color blue is HSL and 220, 15% and 55%. And finally we have color dark blue. This will be our titles color. It has 218 for the hue, 44% saturation, and 22% of lightness. What I like to do, and this is a nice tip that you maybe can also take home with you, is I prefix my custom properties by what they are about. In this case, it's about colors, so I write color. If I would specify spacing units or breakpoints, then I would prefix them with either BP for breakpoint or spacing for pixels or ems or whatever. And in this case, it makes it easier later on in your code to find and reference these custom properties. So this is one tip I can give you. Cool. Then next, let's save. Oh, nothing happened. Well, of course, because we specified our custom properties, but they are not used anywhere in our CSS. There is no body using it or any other element. Before we do that, I want to create a new section for our custom fonts, like so. Our fonts, or the design from Frontend Mentor, specifies that we will use a font called Outfit, which is available on Google Fonts. So let's head over to fonts.google.com and search for Outfit in here. Cool. You can see I already have it selected. We need the regular and bold font weight, and there are two ways to import this into our project. The first one, and this is the most straightforward and easiest one, is to just copy and paste this code snippet into our HTML head. But I don't like to do that really. First of all, I don't like to depend on other people's CDN, be it Google or whoever. And especially in this small project, it's much easier to have everything inside my folder where I can easily access it. I don't have to be online to access the fonts, and yeah, just my preference. You can just copy and paste the snippet, put it into your HTML head. I will host my fonts inside the same folder as the project. And thankfully, Google Fonts allows us to download the font. I don't see it. Maybe I have to increase my size. Yeah, there it is. So we can download this font family, save it to our computer. Oops. Go back here, and yeah, let's go into my downloads, and there it is, outfit.zip. And whenever you download fonts from Google, they will be in the TTF format. Well, thankfully, if we look into caniuse.com statistics, we can see that WoW2 now has a really wide browser support of almost 97%. So all major browsers, apart from IE and Opera Mini, surprise, surprise, they support WoW2, which is the I think the best format for web fonts, at least for now. And a few years ago, you had to convert your web font into multiple formats like SVG and TTF and WoW and WoW2. But now today, thankfully, we just have to go with WoW2. And there are many different tools, websites available. You can just enter TTF to WoW2, and this will, you have to upload your fonts, and this will convert them. Then you can download them again and use them in your project. I don't really like to upload my fonts all the time. It's a bit cumbersome. So I have this handy package called TTF to WoW2 installed on my computer. This is an npm package. You just can run yarn or npm install -g and then TTF to WoW2. And this is a command line utility that I can use to really quickly convert TTF files to WoW2. So let's do that. I get back to my downloads folder. We will need only outfit bold and outfit regular. So I will take these, close this, and let's move it over to my project. I like to create a fonts folder and put them inside. You can also leave them en route. It is really your choice. And for such a simple project, I think it doesn't matter. I just like to be organized in regards to that. So what we can do now is can open our terminal here, clear this out. We have outfit bold and outfit regular, which we both want to convert. So I will start with outfit regular. We will pipe this over to the already installed ttf2wov2 package, and this will be output into a new file which is called outfitregular.wov2. Awesome. And the same for outfit bold. Again, pipe this over to ttf2wov2 and output it to a file called outfit-bold.wov2. And now if we look in our folder, we can see that there are these two new fonts created. Awesome. Which means that we can not rename, but will delete our TTF files. And that's it already. Of course, in order to use our custom fonts, we have to import them into CSS first, using the add font face declaration, which is really simple. I just have to specify the font family of outfit. That's the name of the font family, which I will use later on in my source code. We can say that the font style is normal. It's not italic or anything. And let's start with the font weight of 400, which is our regular one. Font display of swap. This is really nice. It's not that new anymore, but this improves how fonts are loaded in our browser, and how, like, if you have a fallback font like System UI or sans serif, and once the web font has loaded, then how this will be replaced, and avoiding things like flash of content or things like that. And then we have our source URL, which will point to fonts and then regular WOV2 in the format of WOV2. Really important. And that's it for the first one already. Let's take the second. Copy it, paste it. We can close the terminal. And in this case, it's 700 instead of 400, and the name is bold. Awesome. No, that's it. We already have the fonts loaded. If I refresh my page, nothing happens because they are not yet used anywhere. In fact, if you would look into the network tab in your DevTools, you wouldn't even see them being loaded because the browser only loads them once they are actually used in your CSS code anywhere. And with that, we can get our hands dirty with some actual styling, because so far we were busy with setting up our CSS. Let's get some base styles in here. The first thing I would like to do is to select all elements, as well as their before and after pseudo elements. And what I want to do is add box sizing of border box. If you don't know what this does, it basically specifies how if we work with properties like margin, padding, and border, how much the component or the element should grow, or how much space it should take, right? Usually if you specify something like a padding to a component that has a certain width, then the width will increase by whatever padding you set. But in most cases, you want the width to stay as you specified, and you want the padding to go more inside of the component, pushing the text or the content into the inside and not growing the element itself. And this is what border box stands for. It's really typical CSS reset. And if you use things like normalize.css or any other CSS reset, I think almost all of them include some form of this to make styling and layout much easier to handle. This will especially be useful in grids and grid systems and things like that. Then What we have next is our body element, and this one will have a margin of unset. If you don't know unset, it is similar to 0. I just like to prefer unset because it's more clear. It unsets the default browser styling. So if I save this, you can see that my body margin has been removed. You can also go with 0. Unset is not new, or not that new, but yeah, it's still a bit unknown for many developers. Yeah, I just like to use that. I think it's more semantic, at least for me, the developer. Then what I want to add next is some WebKit text size adjust with none to prevent some zooming issues on iOS devices like iOS Safari. This is when I think it's about rotation and landscape or portrait mode. This will ensure that text size isn't weirdly altered by iOS. And so this is to prevent this bug from happening, basically. Then we can set a background color, which is one of our custom properties. And now you can see this nice benefit of having the custom properties prefix with color. If I had much more of them, like fonts and spacing and so on, it would be even more clear. But in this case, I can clearly see all my color properties. And in this case, I want to use the light gray background, which is looking good. Awesome. Next, let's say font family. And font family, we can just specify outfit in here, and that would work. However, it is clearly a good idea to specify some fallback. Imagine that the web font didn't load, network issues, or maybe you messed something up, like the path is incorrect, and then this can't be loaded. So let's say we have outfit S, which is not existent, and that would fall back to this weird serif font, and it looks different on all browsers and all operating systems. This is Linux. So yeah, we want a similar font to what outfit is, which is sans serif. And what I like to do is I like to use this VS Code snippet as a fallback, which includes some sensible defaults, I would say, like the Apple system or the Blink Mac system font. We have Sagio UI, which is for Microsoft Windows. Roboto, I think, is for Android, as well as Oxygen. And finally, we have sans serif. And this is a nice fallback. And before that, we can specify our actual web font outfit. But now, if this wouldn't be able to load, then at least we have a similar looking font, which is nice, I think. And finally, according to the design, we have a font size of 15 pixels as the base size. So yeah, we can set this to our body. Next, I want to set my image's max width to 100% and my height to auto. Why is that? It is not clear on this screen width or viewport width, but if I open my inspector and toggle this mobile view, let's close this. So if I make my viewport smaller, up to this point, you can see that the image will scale. It will be as wide as my viewport, and it'll take up all the available space up until this point, because then this is getting bigger than 288 pixels, so it stays as is. If I wouldn't do this and just leave it out, then you could see that the image will be a bit stubborn and it will stay the same, which means that we have those horizontal scroll bars, which we don't want, right? We want a responsive experience. We want to have this page looking nice on all devices. So this is a really basic, responsive approach, and yeah, I recommend using this on all images where it makes sense. Cool. And then I think that's it for the base styling already. Yeah, now we can go inside our actual card component, and I will create a new comment section in here, call it card. And yes, so Usually I would use a class for that, like give main a class and the image and my title. But since this is a really simple and basic example, I don't see any benefit in using classes. So what I will do, I will directly address the tags. But yeah, again, if you have bigger projects, then it might make sense to at one point migrate over to classes. And you can even do it here. It's up to you. There is no rule or no requirement. But for such simple pages, it makes sense to just directly address the HTML elements. And with that being said, let's start with my background color of var, and then we will have the color white as a background. And this card should have a max width of 320 pixels. Awesome. And if you look into the design again, you can see that the card is placed or aligned in the center of the page on both the X and Y axis. And right now it's not. It is stuck at the top left, which we don't want. So before we go ahead and finish styling our main card, we can quickly add a few properties to align this in the center of the page. So we can say display grid, place items of center. So this is a nice shorthand for placing any content that we have on the page in the center. But as you can see, it doesn't really work because, well, it is centered on the x-axis but not on the y-axis. And why is that? If you look again into your inspector or your DevTools, you can see that the body, it has a height of 499 pixels. It is the same height as the card for now, and it means that the body will take as much space as the content inside it needs. But what we really want is we want the body to take the full height, the entire viewport that we have, so that we can put the card in our center here. And an easy fix for that is to specify a min height property of 100 VH, which stands for viewport height. If I do that, you can see that now the card is aligned on both the Y and X axis. And if you look at the body again, you can see that it now takes the entire page height. And if I go ahead and resize that, you will see that it grows and shrinks accordingly. So this is really a nice way to take up the entire page height. But if in the content is really big, it has lots of text, lots of images, and it outgrows the body, the viewport height, then it can still display the scroll bar like so. You can still see the scroll bar, and then you can scroll up and down to see everything in here. But yeah, I think this is a really nice hack. It's just 3 lines. A few years ago, this would have been much more complicated. Yeah, awesome. So we have this centered, and let's go back into our main card and let's continue. We want to have a padding, and I will specify the padding in rems, 1.75 rems. We could also specify it in pixels, but rems is much better for accessibility reasons. In case a user changes the font size, zooms in, zooms out, this behaves much better, and it's not as fixed as pixels are. It is a bit more dynamic, and the rem, or this value, the size, is relative to the font size of my HTML or body element. So if I would increase my body's font size, then this would also be changing slightly and be adapting to that. Next, we have our border radius, which is 1.35 rems, and we have also a box shadow, which is 0 on the x-axis, 1.6 rems on the y-axis, and 1.6 rems in how much it grows, basically. And then we have our HSLA value, which is 0 in hue, 0 in saturation, 0 in lightness, which means that we get black. And finally, we want this to have an alpha value of 0.05. Awesome. And this is, I think, a really nice design. It looks really cool. And next, let's add some text align of center. Perfect. And finally, I want to add a margin of 1.075 rem again. You won't see any difference right now, but whenever I make my viewport smaller, you can see that the card doesn't attach right to my border. There is a bit of spacing, which I think looks nice. Same for the height. It never directly attaches to the border of the viewport. There is some breathing room around it, which makes it look better on smaller screen sizes. Awesome. Next, we have our image element again, which should also receive a border radius of 0.675 rems. And if you look back, this is pretty similar to what we have in our design here. Yeah, looking really good. Next, we have our H1. It's again pretty simple. We have a font size of 1.357 rem. Again, I'm not giving a pixel value here because it should be relative to what is set on the body, those 15 pixels. So if I would like to increase this to, let's say, 18 pixels at some point, it somehow scales, and it also reflects on the H1 and other elements that also specify their font size and rems. It's much better than just setting this in pixels, I think. Then we have a line height of 1.275 and a margin top of 1.1 EMs. In this case, I'm not using rems but EMs because EM is relative to the font size of this element, which means relative to the H1. Again, if I would like to change the font size here, it also is a bit reflected in our margin top. So it would look better if we, let's say, zoom in, zoom out, or alter the font size. And finally, we have our color of var color dark blue. Awesome, looking good. Next, and that's the final selector already, we have our paragraph. This one has its font size already set by the body, so we will go to line height of 1.3 and color to be color blue. And this will also get a margin of 1.07 EM, 0.05 EM. Awesome, looking good. And if I go back into Frontend Mentor and let's see, and this is looking pretty close. Awesome. So that's it already with the page, with the simple component. I don't think there is much more to it. So what's left is to quickly check that our page is okay in terms of accessibility and maybe markup. And what I like to do is I like to run a quick lighthouse check. So I will open my Chromium browser, put it to the right, and we can put the localhost 5500 in here and open our DevTools. Then I will go over to Lighthouse and run a quick check, generate a report. And I don't expect to see any major issues. It's a really small page, but you never know. And this is looking good. Performance, again, nothing surprising. Well, there is no JavaScript on our page, but I think I have some extensions installed, like maybe Grammarly or anything else. So this is a bit misleading, but this JavaScript, this is from the XDevTools. This is not coming from us, so we can ignore that. Accessibility, this is a good point. Background and foreground colors do not have sufficient contrast ratio. So this is a valid complaint, and if you look into it, you can see that it highlighted this paragraph, which means that the color contrast of this paragraph is not high enough to be satisfying certain guidelines like the AA or AAA specifications. In this case, I will just leave it because it is fixed in the design. in a real world project, what you would do is to approach your designer and have a discussion. Maybe we can increase the color a little bit, make the contrast a bit higher. And if you go into your DevTools inspector and select the text, you can click on the little rectangle here, and you see that Google Chrome already highlights the contrast ratio. So in this case, it doesn't satisfy a AA nor AAA. And if we would drag this a bit to the bottom, you can see that already now there is not really a big difference, but at least now it satisfies the AA standard. AAA is a bit more, so there is a bigger difference here. It all depends. This is really important for users with impacted eye vision. But again, in this case, I will just leave it because this is a fixed design and it's just for training. It's just good to know where to, or how to check this and to make sure that in the real world users are not affected by that. Awesome. Then that's it for accessibility. There are nothing else to complain about. Best practices, we can ignore this for now, and CEO is also good. At last, I want to run a quick check with the X DevTools. Lighthouse also has accessibility scanning included, but X DevTools, they have some additional rules and some additional things that you might want to fix on your page. And it's the same, the contrast ratio or the color contrast. Let's see, it's the paragraph, yes, this one. It's the same. So, same as Google Lighthouse already complained about. So I will just ignore this for now. And then there was nothing else really. We don't have any links, any navigation, nor the landmarks. So I would have been surprised if anything failed in here. Awesome. Then we can close Chrome again. And I think that's it. Nothing more to it. I hope you enjoyed this small video. Nothing fancy really, just a really, really straightforward component. Maybe you learned something from the CSS or how I do it. Again, if you have any questions or any comments, maybe things I did wrong that could be improved, let me know. I'm always happy for feedback or happy to help and answer your questions. And yeah, maybe we'll see each other soon in another video. Until then, take care. Bye.